He was held responsible for one of the most brutal massacres in modern history, an absolute frenzy of mass murder that saw over 100,000 innocent civilians slaughtered in the blasted, burning streets of Manila. And yet, he stands out as one of the very few commanders of Imperial Japan to express profound remorse for his country's devastating actions. On February 23, 1946, just before dawn, General Tomoyuki Yamashita, the man they called the Tiger of Malaya, was brought to a gallows. Stripped of his rank and honors, he was about to face his end. But the story of his execution isn't just the final chapter in the life of a defeated general. It's a story wrapped in a painful, profound question. Was this justice, or was it revenge? To understand the answer, we have to go back to a time when he wasn't a condemned man, but a celebrated conqueror. Before he was branded a war criminal, Tomoyuki Yamashita was one of the most brilliant and feared generals in the Imperial Japanese Army. Born in 1885, he climbed the ranks with a reputation for a sharp mind and an iron will. But it was in the early days of World War II that his name would become legendary. In December 1941, Yamashita launched his invasion of the Malayan Peninsula. The British, sitting comfortably in their fortress of Singapore, thought their position was impregnable, the Gibraltar of the East. They had the numbers, with a force of over 80,000 troops against Yamashita's 30,000. But Yamashita had a wild card. He didn't see the dense jungles as an obstacle, he saw them as a highway. In a move nobody expected, he put his troops on bicycles, sending them pouring through the supposedly impassable terrain. It was a blitzkrieg on two wheels. The British forces, trained for a conventional fight from the sea, were caught completely off guard. Their defenses just fell apart. In only 70 days, Yamashita's smaller army had swept down the entire peninsula. On February 15, 1942, British Lieutenant General Arthur Percival surrendered Singapore. It was the largest capitulation in British military history, a humiliating defeat delivered by a man who had done the impossible. For this shocking victory, Tomoyuki Yamashita earned his nickname, the Tiger of Malaya. But this victory was stained with blood. In the aftermath, Japanese forces, including the dreaded Kempeitai secret police, unleashed a wave of terror called the Sukching Massacre. Tens of thousands of ethnic Chinese in Singapore, suspected of being anti-Japanese, were rounded up and systematically murdered. While historians still debate Yamashita's direct role in ordering the massacre, it was a horrific sign of things to come. Ironically, his incredible success made him powerful enemies back home. Prime Minister Hideki Tojo saw the popular general as a rival and basically exiled him, posting him to a remote command in Manchuria. For 2 years, the Tiger of Malaya was sidelined. But as the war turned against Japan, the empire would call on its most famous general for one last impossible task. In October 1944, Yamashita was sent to the Philippines to defend the islands from a massive American invasion, led by a general with a personal score to settle, Douglas MacArthur. When General Yamashita arrived in Manila on October 6, 1944, he wasn't walking into a position of strength. He was walking into pure chaos. The situation was already a disaster. The Japanese army in the Philippines was a disorganized mess. Communications were shot, supplies were almost gone, and army and navy units often did whatever they wanted. Yamashita was given command just 2 weeks before American forces landed on the island of Leyte. He was a general on paper, but in reality his control was falling apart. He was supposed to defend 7,000 islands against the full might of the American war machine. Realizing it was hopeless to defend Manila, a sprawling city packed with civilians, Yamashita made a critical decision. He ordered all Japanese forces to get out of the city and pull back to the mountains of northern Luzon. His plan wasn't to win, but to bleed the American forces, to tie them up for as long as possible to delay the invasion of Japan itself. But a commander is only as good as the men who follow his orders, and one man's refusal would seal Manila's fate, and Yamashita's. Rear Admiral Sanji Iwabuchi, commander of the Manila Naval Defense Force, received Yamashita's order to evacuate, and he said no. Iwabuchi was a naval officer haunted by a past failure at sea. He was determined to defend Manila to the last man, to die in a blaze of glory instead of retreating. With about 16,000 sailors and marines, he flagrantly disobeyed a direct order from his superior general. He turned the Pearl of the Orient into his personal fortress and its million civilian residents into his hostages. Yamashita, miles away in the mountains trying to organize a defense, had lost control of the capital before the first American soldier even set foot in it. What came next wasn't a battle. It was an apocalypse. On February 3, 1945, American forces entered Manila. For Admiral Iwabuchi and his men, it was the signal to unleash hell. An order circulated among the naval troops. All people on the battlefield, with the exception of Japanese military personnel, will be put to death. The slaughter began. What happened over the next month is hard to even describe. It was a planned, organized extermination of helpless civilians. Japanese soldiers, knowing they were going to die, rampaged through the city with bayonets, machine guns, and flamethrowers. They set entire districts on fire, forcing people from their burning homes only to be mowed down in the streets. The cruelty was personal. At one lumberyard, troops rounded up suspected guerrillas and their families. The men were beheaded in an assembly line of horror. Women and children, even infants, were bayoneted. Hospitals and churches, places that should have been safe, became slaughterhouses. At the Red Cross building, Japanese soldiers went room to room, killing everyone: doctors, nurses, refugees, and patients. Nurses begged for the lives of new mothers and their babies. They were all murdered. At De La Salle College, 41 people seeking refuge were systematically killed. Entire families were wiped out. The wife and 3 children of a future Philippine president were shot down as they fled their home. Women were subjected to mass rape before being killed. Pregnant women were disemboweled. Thousands of civilians were used as human shields or herded into buildings that were then set on fire or blown up with grenades. For 29 days, the nightmare continued. By the time the city was finally taken on March 3rd, Manila was a smoking ruin. Over 100,000 Filipino civilians were dead, either butchered by Iwabuchi's men or killed in the brutal crossfire. Admiral Iwabuchi, the architect of this horror, took his own life in the final days of the battle. But the world decided that the responsibility lay with the man at the top, the man who was miles away in the mountains, the general who had ordered the city evacuated in the first place, Tomoyuki Yamashita. While Manila burned, General Yamashita and his army fought a desperate, bloody battle in the mountains of Luzon. For months, they held out against superior American and Filipino forces, fighting not just the enemy, but also starvation and disease. He only stopped fighting when Japan's formal surrender was announced. On September 2, 1945, he walked out of the mountains and surrendered. When asked why he didn't commit ritual suicide, as was common, his answer was chillingly practical. "If I kill myself," he said, "someone else will have to take the blame." He seemed to know a day of reckoning was coming, and he was ready to face it. He didn't wait long. On October 8, 1945, Yamashita was charged with war crimes in a battle-scarred Manila courtroom. The man who had conquered Singapore was now a prisoner. The trial of the Tiger of Malaya was about to begin, rushed into motion by General Douglas MacArthur himself. And this wasn't going to be a trial about what Yamashita did. It was about what his men did, and it was about to change the laws of war forever. The trial of General Yamashita lasted from October 29 to December 7, 1945. The charge against him was unlike any other. He wasn't accused of ordering the Manila Massacre. He wasn't accused of taking part in it. He was charged because he unlawfully disregarded and failed to discharge his duty as commander to control the operations of the members of his command, permitting them to commit brutal atrocities. For weeks, the court heard from 286 witnesses. Survivors gave gut-wrenching accounts of the massacres. The prosecution showed that the breakdown in communications was so complete that Yamashita couldn't have known about the atrocities in Manila, let alone stop them. They presented the evidence that he had explicitly ordered Admiral Iwabuchi to evacuate the city, an order that was ignored. How could he be responsible for a subordinate who openly disobeyed him? Yamashita himself took the stand, denying any knowledge of the crimes. He claimed, "What I'm really being charged with is losing the war." But the trial itself was controversial. The commission was appointed by General MacArthur, who was seen as having a personal vendetta. Rules were relaxed, allowing hearsay as evidence. Crucial evidence showing Yamashita had no real command over naval units like Iwabuchi's was dismissed. To many, it felt less like a fair trial and more like an exercise in revenge. On December 7, 1945, the verdict came in. Guilty. The sentence, death by hanging. Yamashita's lawyers fought desperately, appealing all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. The court refused to overturn the verdict in a 5-2 decision. But two justices wrote scathing dissents. Justice Frank Murphy called the trial a miscarriage of justice and a denial of human rights, blasting the lack of real evidence and the flawed process. A final plea for mercy to President Harry S. Truman was denied. The Tiger of Malaya had run out of time. Yamashita's execution was the birth of a new and controversial legal idea, command responsibility, known today as the Yamashita Standard. This standard created a radical new rule. A commander has a duty to control their troops and prevent them from committing war crimes. This rule applies even if the commander didn't order the crimes, didn't know about them, and couldn't directly stop them. The core of it rests on three powerful words: should have known. This became a powerful tool. The idea was to stop high-ranking leaders from just pleading ignorance to escape justice. It puts the burden on commanders to actively police their own troops. The Yamashita Standard has been cited in international law ever since, including the Geneva Conventions. But from the very start, it's been fiercely criticized. Critics, including the two dissenting Supreme Court justices, called Yamashita's trial victor's justice. They argued that a new law was created and then applied retroactively to a defeated enemy. The prosecution, they said, never actually proved that Yamashita knew what was happening or that he had any way to stop it, given the total collapse of his command. The case of Admiral Iwabuchi's defiance is key. Can you really hold a commander responsible for the actions of a subordinate who willfully disobeys a direct order? The critics argued Yamashita was punished not for a crime he committed, but for the position he held. It raises a chilling question. Does the standard hold commanders to an impossible level of accountability, especially in the chaos of war? So why is Yamashita remembered for his remorse, something so rare among Japan's high command? The answer is complex and reveals a man grappling with failure on a national, professional, and personal level. Unlike many other convicted war criminals, Yamashita didn't make excuses for the atrocities. Hours before his execution, he gave a final statement. It wasn't just an apology for Manila, it was broader. He spoke of his own guilt for having survived while so many of his soldiers died under his command. Most importantly, he blamed the war on Japan's own leadership. He criticized the nation's blind faith in authority and urged the next generation to think for themselves. While his official defense denied responsibility, personal accounts suggest he acknowledged his failure to control his troops. One analysis notes he seemed to have internalized the pain of the victims, and in a separate document, he sincerely apologized to all the people of the Philippines for the atrocities that his troops committed. There are even accounts from his time in Singapore where he reportedly apologized to victims and executed his own soldiers caught looting. So was his remorse for the victims of Manila, or for the entire catastrophic war his country started? It seems to be both. He felt the sting of personal failure, the national shame of a disastrous war, and a genuine horror at what his men had done. He didn't die defiant. He died as a man trying to make sense of the violence he was a part of, urging his country to choose a better path. In the pre-dawn darkness of February 23, 1946, the final act took place at Los Baños prison camp. General Tomoyuki Yamashita, now 60 years old, was led to the gallows. By order of General MacArthur, he was dressed in a plain uniform, stripped of all medals and rank. He walked calmly to the 13 steps. When asked for last words, his reply was quiet and dignified. He thanked his American lawyers, his interpreter, and the Buddhist priest with him. He said, "I will pray for the Japanese emperor and the welfare of His Majesty." Then he added, "I don't blame my executioner. I'll pray the gods bless them." A black hood was placed over his head. At 3:02 a.m., the executioner pulled the lever and the trapdoor sprang open. The man known as the Tiger of Malaya was pronounced dead. The story of Tomoyuki Yamashita doesn't give us any easy answers. It leaves us with huge, uncomfortable questions. Was he a monster who got what he deserved for the orgy of mass murder committed by his men? Or was he a tragic figure, a general in an impossible situation who became the first victim of a questionable new standard of justice? His trial created the Yamashita Standard, a principle that shapes international law to this day, a permanent legacy born from the ashes of Manila. Yet the facts of his own case, the defied orders, the broken communication, the rushed trial, leave a deep shadow of doubt. He was a man who showed remorse rare among his peers and criticized his own nation's path to war. History is still debating. So, what do you think? Was General Yamashita a war criminal who deserved his fate, or was he a scapegoat for the crimes of others? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you value these deep dives into the moral questions of history, please consider subscribing for more stories that challenge the way we see the past.